Happiness doesn't depend on others. It's a simple statement. But when we look closer, we start to see the layers beneath it, layers that reveal just how often we rely on the outside world to validate our worth, our emotions, and even our purpose. For most of our lives, we're conditioned to think that happiness is something that's granted to us by external circumstances. We believe it's woven into the presence of someone we love, a job we desire, or approval from those around us. We're taught to chase happiness through relationships, achievements, or possessions, but in truth, none of these things can provide the lasting contentment we seek. Happiness that relies on others is fragile. It's like a house built on shaky ground. When the source of that happiness shifts, disappears, or disappoints, our sense of fulfillment crumbles along with it. When our happiness depends on others, it becomes conditional. It's no longer a feeling that can stand on its own, but something that's continuously threatened by the potential for rejection, loss, or failure. We become vulnerable to circumstances outside of ourselves, subject to the tides of other people's actions, opinions, and approval. Imagine if happiness were a vessel filled by our relationships with others. Every time someone enters our life, it feels like they pour into that vessel, adding value, meaning, and joy. But then when people inevitably leave, whether by choice or by circumstance, that same vessel is suddenly emptied. Each time this happens, we are forced to confront a stark emptiness, a void left by the reliance we placed on someone else for our sense of peace. It's in these moments that we realize happiness tied to others is temporary. It's an ebb and flow we can't control, a source of contentment that's never quite steady or secure. But what if that vessel, that inner reservoir of joy, were self-sustaining? What if it didn't need to be filled by someone else's presence or by any external event? This shift is what transforms happiness from something fleeting and conditional into something deeply rooted and lasting. When happiness comes from within, we become less vulnerable to the changing dynamics of our relationships and the unpredictability of life. We are no longer waiting for someone to show up in order for us to feel whole. Instead, we start to understand that we are the source of our own fulfillment. We realize that our happiness doesn't need a reason, it simply exists, stemming from the values, passions, and inner peace we cultivate within ourselves. Happiness that doesn't depend on others is liberating. It means we can walk through life with an unshakable foundation, one that doesn't sway with the arrival or departure of others. It means we are free to love and connect with people not because they complete us, but because they enhance our already complete lives. This kind of happiness isn't threatened by someone else's opinion or by the validation we receive from outside. It's a self-contained joy that celebrates who we are, not who others perceive us to be. There's a power in this self-sustained happiness because it gives us control over our emotional world. We can experience the highs and lows of life with others, but our happiness isn't on the line when things don't go according to plan. We don't lose ourselves when someone walks away, and we don't crumble when life throws us challenges. This is the strength that comes from finding happiness within a resilience that allows us to embrace love, connection, and success with gratitude, knowing that our inner joy doesn't hinge on any of it. When we truly understand that happiness doesn't depend on others, we gain a profound sense of freedom. We are no longer held hostage by the need for validation or companionship. We are free to grow, to pursue our dreams, to follow our hearts without the fear of being alone. We are no longer dependent on anyone or anything to feel at peace with ourselves. This isn't a selfish isolation, it's an empowerment that invites us to fully appreciate others without expecting them to carry our joy. It's a shift from asking, who will make me happy, to understanding, I am the one who creates my own happiness. Embracing solitude as a sanctuary, rather than seeing it as a void, is a transformative shift that allows us to view time alone, not as something to avoid, but as something sacred. Solitude has often been portrayed as a state of lacking company, lacking connection, lacking the comfort of someone by our side. But solitude isn't an empty space or a hollow silence. Instead, it's a refuge, a place where we can lay down the burdens of the world and return to our authentic selves. When we embrace solitude as a sanctuary, we enter a realm where we are free from expectations, from judgments, and from the noise of daily life. It becomes a place where we can breathe, reflect, and reconnect with who we are at the core. For many, the idea of being alone brings discomfort or even fear. Our world constantly bombards us with messages that equate solitude with loneliness, as if time spent alone means we're missing out or that something is inherently lacking in our lives. But solitude and loneliness are not the same. Loneliness is the pain of separation. Solitude is the joy of introspection. Solitude offers us a kind of intimacy with ourselves that we can't find anywhere else. It's a space where we can be honest, where we can explore our thoughts and feelings without the influence of others. In this way, solitude becomes a sanctuary, an intimate, nurturing place that we can retreat to whenever we need to recharge and center ourselves. When we embrace solitude as a sanctuary, we begin to understand that we're not avoiding others or isolating ourselves. Instead, we're choosing to create time for inner exploration. It's in this sanctuary that we can reflect on our values, our dreams, and our purpose. We're not performing for anyone, not striving to meet expectations, and not worrying about judgment. This time alone allows us to shed the layers we wear around others and see ourselves clearly, perhaps for the first time. Solitude gives us the rare opportunity to sit with our emotions, to process our experiences, and to gain insight into our patterns and behaviors. It's here in this sanctuary that true growth and healing can take place. In solitude, we often find a sense of clarity that's difficult to achieve in the presence of others. The world around us is full of distractions, and even when we're with people we love, we're often busy attending to their needs, responding to their energy, or trying to keep up with conversations. But in solitude, we don't have to keep up with anyone else. We can be still, allowing our minds to wander, our hearts to feel, and our spirits to rest. In this quiet space, we can listen to our inner voice without interruption. We may discover insights about ourselves that were previously drowned out by the noise of the outside world. This clarity is a gift of solitude, a gift that allows us to move through life with greater self-awareness and purpose. Solitude as a sanctuary is also a place of creativity and inspiration. Some of our most powerful ideas, our most profound reflections come to us when we're alone. When we allow ourselves to be present with our own thoughts, free from the influence of others, we give our minds the space to dream, to innovate, and to explore possibilities we might otherwise overlook. Solitude fosters creativity because it gives us the freedom to think outside the bounds of conventional expectations. Artists, writers, thinkers, and innovators have long recognized the value of solitude as a source of inspiration, as a wellspring where they can draw deeply and create something meaningful. When we embrace solitude in this way, we come to see it not as a void, but as a sanctuary for the imagination and the soul. Solitude also allows us to build a relationship with ourselves. We often think about the importance of relationships with others, but we rarely talk about our relationship with ourselves. Solitude is the space where we can nurture this relationship, where we can learn to appreciate our own company, and where we can cultivate self-love and self-respect. When we spend time alone, we learn to befriend ourselves, to understand our strengths and weaknesses, and to offer ourselves compassion. It's in this sanctuary that we learn to treat ourselves with the same kindness and empathy that we so readily offer to others. Over time, solitude teaches us that we are enough, that we don't need someone else to complete us because we are whole just as we are. Embracing solitude as a sanctuary also strengthens our resilience. In solitude, we learn to rely on ourselves, to become comfortable with our own thoughts, and to find peace in our own presence. We learn that we don't need to be constantly surrounded by others to feel secure. Instead, we discover that our strength and comfort come from within. This inner resilience becomes a foundation that supports us in times of difficulty, helping us to stand firm even when we face challenges or loss. Solitude gives us the space to build this resilience, to remind ourselves of our inner resources, and to find strength we didn't know we had. When solitude becomes a sanctuary, it shifts from something we might avoid to something we seek. We begin to crave these moments of quiet reflection, these times when we can retreat from the demands of the world and simply be. We realize that solitude is not a punishment, but a privilege, a precious gift that allows us to experience the fullness of who we are. In this sanctuary, we find peace, inspiration, strength, and self-acceptance. It's a place where we can reconnect with our deepest values and nurture the inner well-being that sustains us. Practicing self-compassion daily is one of the most powerful and healing choices we can make for ourselves. Yet for many of us, it's also one of the most challenging. We're often taught to show kindness and compassion to others, but rarely are we taught to extend that same warmth, understanding, and patience inward. Many of us, by default, are our own harshest critics. We judge ourselves for our mistakes, replay embarrassing moments, and hold ourselves to impossibly high standards. We carry around a voice that speaks to us in ways we'd never dare speak to someone we care about. Practicing self-compassion daily is about recognizing this, acknowledging it, and gently challenging ourselves to change that internal dialogue. Self-compassion begins with self-awareness. It's about noticing when we're being hard on ourselves, when that critical voice starts whispering or shouting in our minds. It's becoming mindful of the times we call ourselves not enough, not smart enough, not strong enough, not successful enough. These thoughts often come up when we make mistakes, fall short of our expectations, or feel rejected. Practicing self-compassion means paying attention to these moments without judgment. It's saying, I see you, and I know this feels difficult. It's choosing to respond with kindness rather than with more criticism or shame. One of the core elements of self-compassion is understanding that suffering, failure, and imperfection are a shared human experience. Everyone struggles, everyone makes mistakes, everyone feels inadequate from time to time. This isn't a unique flaw in us, it's part of being human. When we truly understand this, we can start to let go of the belief that our struggles isolate us, that our challenges make us different or unworthy. Self-compassion connects us to others because it reminds us that we are not alone in our pain or imperfection. Every time we show kindness to ourselves, we acknowledge our shared humanity, which softens the self-criticism that tells us we should be flawless or unbreakable. Daily self-compassion also involves challenging the myths we've internalized about self-worth and achievement. We're often taught that self-compassion means letting ourselves off the hook, that it's somehow unproductive or self-indulgent. But self-compassion isn't about ignoring responsibility or avoiding growth. It's about accepting where we are with gentleness so that we can actually grow in healthy, sustainable ways. When we show kindness to ourselves, we're more likely to learn from our experiences instead of getting stuck in cycles of shame or regret. We give ourselves the courage to take risks, to try again, and to move forward. True self-compassion doesn't weaken our resolve, it strengthens it by grounding us in acceptance, not criticism. Self-compassion is also a practice in patience. Growth, healing, and self-acceptance don't happen overnight. There will be days when we feel frustrated, when we fall back into old habits of self-criticism, or when we feel like we're not making any progress. Practicing self-compassion means allowing ourselves to be patient with the journey. It's realizing that just as we would wait patiently for a friend to overcome a challenge, we can extend that same patience to ourselves. We give ourselves the space to make mistakes, to learn, and to heal at our own pace. This patience becomes a form of kindness, a gentle reminder that we don't have to rush to become the perfect version of ourselves. Daily self-compassion is also about developing a kinder inner dialogue. The words we use with ourselves matter, and we often underestimate the power they hold. Think about the way you talk to yourself when things don't go well. Do you use harsh words, call yourself names, or replay failures? Practicing self-compassion means catching these thoughts and actively choosing a different tone. It's telling ourselves, I'm doing the best I can, or it's okay to struggle, this doesn't define me. Over time, these compassionate statements become familiar, and we begin to replace the critical voice with a nurturing one. This shift might feel uncomfortable at first, but like any habit, it becomes easier with practice, and eventually it becomes our new way of relating to ourselves. Self-compassion is about letting go of the need to always have it all together. So often we feel pressure to appear strong, capable, and unaffected, especially when life gets hard. But true compassion, the kind we'd offer a loved one, doesn't demand perfection or invincibility. Practicing self-compassion means allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, to admit when we're struggling, and to give ourselves permission to be human. It's acknowledging that some days we won't have all the answers, that we'll feel lost or uncertain. And in those moments, instead of judging ourselves, we can gently remind ourselves that we're doing the best we can. Self-compassion makes space for our full humanity, for our messiness, our uncertainty, our fears. In moments of self-compassion, we learn to comfort ourselves. This might mean physically comforting ourselves with something soothing, like placing a hand over our heart or taking a deep breath. It might mean giving ourselves a break when we're feeling overwhelmed. Sometimes self-compassion looks like taking a moment to say, I'm proud of you for trying, or you're allowed to feel this way. These gestures may seem small, but they have a profound impact on our mental and emotional well-being. They teach us that we are capable of providing the comfort and reassurance we need, that we don't have to look outside ourselves for validation or acceptance. Practicing self-compassion daily is about creating a safe space within ourselves. When we show up for ourselves with kindness, we build an inner sanctuary where we can retreat during difficult times. We become our own source of comfort, support, and understanding. Over time, this self-compassion creates a deep sense of security, a knowledge that no matter what we face, we have our own back. It empowers us to face challenges with greater resilience because we know we won't abandon ourselves in moments of struggle. Self-compassion is a promise to ourselves, a commitment to stand by our side, not only when things are going well, but especially when they aren't. Rediscovering what sparks joy within is a journey back to our true selves. Over time, the demands and routines of daily life can cause us to lose sight of what genuinely makes us feel alive, what stirs something deep within us, what brings a sense of lightness to our souls. Life's responsibilities and pressures often lead us to focus on things that are necessary but not necessarily joyful, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, the activities, passions, and small pleasures that once filled us with joy start to fade into the background. Rediscovering these sparks of joy isn't just about finding fleeting happiness, it's about reconnecting with the parts of ourselves that bring meaning, creativity, and energy to our lives. This rediscovery begins with curiosity and openness. Often we feel we have to wait for joy to find us, but in reality, we can actively seek out and nurture it. Reconnecting with joy starts with asking ourselves questions we may not have asked in years. What excites me? What activities make me lose track of time? When do I feel most like myself? These aren't simple questions, and the answers may not come right away, but by giving ourselves the space to wonder, we plant the seeds for joy to re-enter our lives. It's about giving ourselves permission to explore without expectation, to try new things or return to old hobbies, simply because they might light something up within us. Rediscovering joy also involves a willingness to be vulnerable. Often the things that spark joy within us are deeply personal, and returning to them can feel both exhilarating and intimidating. We may worry that we're no longer good at the things we once loved, or that they won't bring the same satisfaction they used to. We may even feel a sense of shame or self-consciousness about allowing ourselves to do things purely for pleasure. But embracing vulnerability is a key part of this journey. It's acknowledging that while the pursuit of joy might feel unfamiliar or even uncomfortable, it's a path worth walking. It's about allowing ourselves to be imperfect, to start small, and to try things simply because they make our hearts feel full. Often, rediscovering joy requires us to let go of the need for productivity and accomplishment. In our fast-paced world, we're encouraged to measure the worth of activities by their outcomes, whether they help us advance in our careers, improve our skills, or create something tangible. But joy isn't always productive, and it doesn't have to be. Sometimes joy is found in the quiet, unassuming moments reading a book, watching the sunset, getting lost in a creative project, or dancing in the kitchen. These moments don't achieve anything in the traditional sense, but they enrich us in ways that are profound and lasting. By letting go of the need to be productive, we create room for joy to flourish in its simplest, purest form. Rediscovering joy is also an invitation to reconnect with our senses and be present in the moment. Joy often comes to us in the here and now in the sounds, sights, and textures of our immediate experience. We may find it in the feel of the earth beneath our feet during a walk in nature, in the laughter shared with a friend, in the aroma of a favorite meal, or in the warmth of the sun on our skin. When we slow down enough to notice and appreciate these moments, we open ourselves to the joy that is already present in our lives. By reconnecting with our senses, we come to see that joy isn't always something we need to seek sometimes. It's waiting for us in the small, beautiful details of everyday life. Sometimes rediscovering joy requires us to challenge our own limiting beliefs. We might think I'm too old to start something new, or I don't have time for hobbies, or that's not practical. These beliefs can be powerful barriers to joy, keeping us stuck in routines that leave little room for spontaneity, creativity, or fun. But joy is not confined by age, time, or practicality. It doesn't ask for permission. And it isn't limited by expectations. When we begin to let go of these limiting beliefs, we open the door to experiences and interests we may never have considered. We give ourselves the freedom to explore, to experiment, and to pursue joy simply for the sake of it. Rediscovering joy is also about tuning in to the people and places that uplift us. There are environments and relationships that bring out the best in us, that remind us of who we are and what matters most. These are the connections that make us feel seen, appreciated, and energized, whether it's spending time with loved ones, being in nature, or engaging in a creative community. Rediscovering joy often involves gravitating toward these nourishing spaces. Accepting uncertainty doesn't mean resigning ourselves to chaos. Rather, it's an invitation to let go of the constant need to have all the answers. When we embrace this perspective, we free ourselves from the mental and emotional tension that comes with overthinking and overplanning. The mind loves certainty. It craves solid ground and predictable outcomes, but life is rarely that straightforward. Learning to find peace in the present without needing everything to be figured out allows us to approach life with a spirit of openness and resilience. It helps us to be adaptable, to flow with life's inevitable changes, and to trust that we have the inner strength to face whatever comes our way. The journey to find happiness within ourselves is one of the most empowering choices we can make. True happiness isn't something that waits for us in others or in what the future might hold. It's cultivated in the present, in our own hearts, and through our own actions. By finding joy in solitude, practicing self-compassion, accepting uncertainty, and reconnecting with the things that bring us peace and fulfillment, we create a life that feels whole, grounded, and vibrant no matter what comes our way. Happiness that's built from within is resilient, steady, and unwavering, ready to support us through every chapter of life.